I will say this about those 3 teams that were vying for that last spot, and we realized it was really 2 teams that the committee was debating, Ohio State and Alabama. There was not a good choice. Okay, so like you're arguing between average resumes. So for those that you want to argue to expand the playoff, you're wrong. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But it's because we're arguing between average resumes at this point, okay? Both of these teams had major flaws. You had a 31-point loss to an average Iowa team for Ohio State. You had little to no good wins for Alabama, okay? So everything was weak about these 2 teams. You're debating this. That's why you've got to look at the committee rather than the teams, okay? So rather than debate the resumes, I want to just outline some of the inconsistencies that we've seen from this committee in 4 years. I want to go back to, if you're going to have a subjective crowning of a champion, which this is, then why are we keeping score in the first place? What sport that you keep score do you then subjectively crown a champion? Do we keep score in figure skating? No, because the judges keep the score for us. Do we keep score in gymnastics? No, because the judges keep the score for us. So why do we even have scoreboards? Let's just all play, turn the scoreboards off, and then send the film in to be evaluated, because that's what happened with this committee. They told us that nothing else matters what they've told us in the past. They are dishonest, inaccurate, and completely unreliable. This committee is. And you can break those all the way down. Kirby Hocutt lied to us the entire year. Last week, he told us Ohio State and Alabama, there was very little razor-thin margin between the 2, and now all of a sudden it's unequivocally that without playing a game, Alabama is better than Ohio State after Ohio State beat Wisconsin. It's crazy, the inconsistencies that we're seeing from this committee, which is why I'm of the belief that the long-term health of the playoff is at risk. Because right now, there's zero trustworthiness within the committee and the playoff structure completely.
So where do you go? What do you do? What's the solution? What's the answer?
Well, there are a lot of ways to go. The first and foremost is that we have got to create a system where you have to win your conference in order to go to the playoff. The fact that you can go to the playoff and compete for the national championship without winning your division or winning your conference is creating this mess. That fact is creating this mess, and that was totally born out of the greed of the SEC. Mike Slive was the most influential commissioner when this playoff was created. He's no longer the commissioner of the SEC.
But also when the playoff was created, the SEC by far was the most dominant team.
No doubt.
And had the best coaching staff.
No doubt.
That has changed.
That has changed. They're an average conference this year with a few really good teams at the top. My solution is very simple. All you have to do is say that you've got to win your conference championship in order to go. Well, then all of a sudden, not only do the conference championship games become much more valuable, but now I just placed more value on the Iron Bowl. Because right now, the Iron Bowl, they told me it didn't matter. Auburn won what? Got penalized because they had to go play Georgia. And Alabama gets to skate through. So you're placing more importance on each game that is played. You're placing more importance on the conference champions. And you're retaining the quality of the regular season by still throwing out one of the conference champions. The worst conference champion, you throw them out, and then you go and you play the 4 teams in the playoff. That's the way to fix this. Unless they do this, we are going to continue to see the dishonesty and inaccuracies throughout this committee's ranking system from the week, whatever it is, 6 on each college football season. In fact, I would say that this year is actually the exact argument of why you shouldn't expand, because we're starting to argue average resumes. Resumes that probably don't deserve access to a national championship anyways.
Right.
And the further you go, and that's just the 4-5 debate. So the further you go down, the more average the resumes get, and the less that we're going to retain our meaningful regular season, which I think sets college football apart from any other sport, is the meaningful regular season. It's the most important regular season in all of sport, and I want to retain that. I think it's special.
Okay, so let me make my case for the 8-team playoff.
I'd love it, because I know you've been an 8-team guy for a long time.
A specific version of the 8-team playoff.
Okay.
Which is your 5 conference winners, which is kind of
automatic berth.
Automatic berth of 5 conference winners, 3 wild card spots determined by the committee's ranking with 1 asterisk, which is if you are an undefeated team, you get in. So UCF,
so group of 5, power 5.
The only way the group of 5 is guaranteed in, without being in the high enough in the ranking, is if you're undefeated. So UCF, you know what? Go prove you can win these games.
They would love it.
They would love it. The first round is played at the home stadiums of the 1 through 4 seed. The seedings go by the college football playoff rankings. And then we have a 3-week, or I guess 3 weekends thing, similar to what college basketball has, which is you have weekends of your quarterfinals, then during the week your smaller bowls. The next weekend or Monday, however it works with New Year's, you have your semifinal, and then your larger bowls, your Cotton Bowl, whatever it is, and then you have your national championship. You would dominate the sports discussion for 3 weeks. There would be no controversy about did a team get snubbed. This year, can we show what it would have looked like this year under my
You've got
system?
a bracket.
I've got a bracket that I can show you.
Bracket.
So 1, Clemson would host UCF.
Okay.
2, Oklahoma would host USC. 3, Georgia hosts Wisconsin. 4, Alabama hosts 5, Ohio State.
All right.
You would be incentivized for these big non-conference games.
Clemson's just scored another touchdown. They're up 80-30
Okay.
on UCF.
Well, good for them.
I mean, they just, whoa, they just scored again. Extra point.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's a reward for being the number 1 seed, Cece. And you would encourage major non-conference games, because it can't hurt you as far as getting into the playoff if you win your conference you're in, but it can help you if you don't win your conference to be one of those at-large teams. And lastly, you're going to say, oh, the games wouldn't matter as much. Guess what? Pac-12 championship game matters a hell of a lot more under my system. The games to determine who's going to win each division matters a hell of a lot more under my system. TCU is playing for a spot to be in the playoff under my system. So that's the idea.
All right, here we go, because you're my partner. Let me go against why this system is no good. All right, for one, UCF playing Clemson, they're going to get destroyed. Now, UCF had a huge game against South Florida, right? Huge game.
Yeah, huge.
Then they played the conference championship, right?
That's right.
And then they would play again, right?
That's right.
Before they even get in the Final Four. Now, Nick,
weeks.
how do the parents go to these games? How do the parents whose kids on it, how do they afford that? Okay, because Ohio State, let me tell you what their parents did the last several weeks. They went to Michigan.
Yeah.
They went back home, because most of the parents don't live in the college town. Then they went to Indianapolis. So now they would be paying to go to another game, and then another game. So the resources that people that like to come up with these systems, they're not thinking about the kids. My mom wouldn't be able to go. You say, I'm in the college playoff. My mom wouldn't be able to afford either take time off work and or afford. Now, I know the universities, they do give them a travel stipend, but it doesn't carry it. So now you have the parents. They can't go to the game. You said they would dominate the month of January. When are they going to play the games? Wednesday night? Because the NFL.
No, Saturdays.
What about the NFL playoff game?
No,
we play on Saturdays too.
This all leads up to prior to the first week in the NFL playoffs, just like it does now. Right now, the semifinals are on New Year's Day. So you backtrack that 1 week.
New Year's Day is on which day, Nick?
Monday.
Hold on.
They have it on Monday for a reason.
Okay, well then,
because they don't want to go against the
Monday's
NFL.
Fine. If that's what we want to do.
I just want to say, like, it's really well thought out, right? Like, I get it, and it is what you would likely do. If you're going to say, what should we do if it was an 8-team playoff? Well, this is how I would structure an 8-team playoff, so on and so forth. I can give access to the national championship to the same number of teams and yet retain the importance of the regular season and retain the importance of the big championship games and the conference championship games. Because the problem with your system, as it's laid out, is you said, how much more meaningful would the Pac-12 championship be? How much more meaningful for TCU? So you brought up TCU. TCU was ranked 11th. Okay? I want it to be important for the team ranked first and second every week. Okay? So basically what I'm telling you is, what would prevent Oklahoma in the conference championship game? Hold on. From saying, like, well, you know, we're going to be at large anyways. Like, Baker doesn't need to play.
Because you don't know that. Because guess what? Guess whose name was not on there?
Why?
Auburn. Auburn was the number 2 team in the country, lost their conference championship. They wouldn't have made it in this system.
But they had 3 losses, too.
But
they
you
shouldn't make it.
don't know. There's still access, right? So the level of importance versus a system where you say you have to win your conference championship. Okay, now those games, I just made them not just like, oh, they could matter more, to like, they matter, right? If you have to win your conference championship,
aren't home games important in
I'm
college
giving
football?
10 teams really access to the national championship. But if I throw one out via the committee, and just say, okay, the top 4 go on. Now I'm also giving importance to the Auburn-Alabama game. I'm giving importance to the Michigan-Ohio State game. I'm giving ultimate importance to every single game while still allowing access to the same number of teams that you're giving access. Because all you're doing is arguing for access.
Sure, but I'm also arguing the top 4 would get home games. So Oklahoma's not resting anybody. If it's the difference between that game against USC being in Norman and them having to go to Alabama, like they're not resting guys.
So your importance on those games is for seeding, and mine is for just all the marbles. Right? I mean, are we talking seeding here? It's like we're talking about practice. That's what it feels like.
When we discussed this earlier, CC, the point you made a point, not about the families, but about the players and about the number of games.
Yeah, I didn't even get a chance to get to that.
So that's why I was trying.
I mean, I'm not trying to kill your case.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
But at some point, you have to think about the kids' academics. And when you go into the winter quarter, which you do in January, now you're taking another month where they have football as their number one concern. And I'm just going to tell you academically, man, that fall quarter is rough. You take 15, 18 hours and you're playing Division I football, it is rough. And now you're going to make my second quarter, which I could take some time off, a fast start academically, because we know with the spring quarter, get back playing spring football.
Yeah.
So at some point, we are talking about the student athlete. And we just can't keep adding games, adding teams just for the sake of it.
Yeah, I will tell you this, like those arguing for 8, I will just tell you, the only 5 people that can actually make that happen are the 5 commissioners of the Power 5 conferences. I've talked to at least 3 of them for sure, and 4th I've had a conversation with. It is not happening. It is not even on the table. I'm talking about not even on the table.
Is anything going to happen? How realistic is it that anything
just got this system.
change?
Yeah.
I know, that's why I'm saying we're talking about all these potential different kinds of systems.
Okay,
Joel
that's a
came with
great
one.
question. That's a great question.
I'm from Ohio State, and I don't want the system to change. I think it's not a perfect system, but it is a good enough, and it's better than what we've had in the past.
I think that the system will remain intact. What I think you're going to start to see a shift in is language. Right? So the language that the committee uses to rank teams, I think, will start to shift. And the reason is because prior to this year, there was really only 2 conference commissioners that were really frustrated with the system, which was the Pac-12, Larry Scott, and the Big 12, Bob Bowlesby. But now Jim Delaney is going to be frustrated because he's going to think to himself, you know, this was not right for us. We had 3 better wins than Alabama had. We played 4 different games that were better than any game.
Teams were in the top 5.
Yeah, exactly. And so what you're going to see is Jim Delaney and those other 2 now have the 3-to-2 ratio, okay? So now they're going to be able to say, listen, you play 8 conference games in the ACC and the SEC, so we're going to change the language from 4 best to most deserving, or you've got to win your conference to go. So I think we're going to see a slight change in language, but the overall structure, that's not going to change until that media rights deal is up. And trust me when I tell you this, college football fans, those of you arguing for 8 teams, it's not even being discussed. I'm talking about not even
started the discussion
on
right
the
here
table.
this morning.
Not on the
People
table.
thought that was a compelling argument.
I called Nick last night.
And everything.
Wait, Joel, I called Nick at midnight, and he's like, I can't talk to you now. I got a system that Joel and CC are going to love. I'm in the middle of building a graphic right now. It's going to be fantastic.
No divisions, top 2 seeds in the championship games got to win it to go.
Your system's perfect. I see.
Of course.
Okay, yeah. My system's not on the table. Joel's system.
It's great to see you, but even better to have you here in New York.
Joel,
Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
See.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.